Well, hello there, I'm Detroit. Today, let's talk about, surprise surprise, drawing. You won't be seeing any side view for this drawing, by the way. I forgot to press a button on OBS, and so the side view didn't record. I use an OBS module called Source Record, which allows the recording of two cameras at once. I turned it off recently because I was recording a digital drawing video, and I had no use of the camera footage, but I forgot to turn it back on. Anyway, today's drawing is abstract, made with black ink and my favorite fountain pen. I thought I would revisit something fun I made a while back, which was mixing perspective and abstract drawing. Actually, I already did that twice. There was this time, I drew some shapes at 2 AM, which clearly show perspective points interlacing, and the second drawing is this one, with the central focus point and the abstract pattern revolving around it. Today I'm doing 3 points of perspective. I want to make something that looks like fireworks at 3 different points. It's a somewhat simple pattern because honestly when I started it I had absolutely no idea how I would pull it off. Drawing is like that, it's a lot of trial and error, and although the pattern is quite simple, in the end I think the result looks really good. You'll see it at the end of the video, by the way, so keep watching until the end. It gives me watch time, which I heard is a good thing. So once I have decided where the points of perspective are located on the page, I started making lines. While I was drawing, I saw it as sort of laser beams exploding from the central point. The white lines emphasized by the black ink are different length, which makes for a more interesting drawing than if they were all the similar length. I'm saying that because I hesitated a bit. Having similar length for every line would also look good, but it would make the drawing look like a mosaic of sorts, which makes it less dynamic and kinda loses the whole explosion aspect of it. To also break the pattern a bit, I'm adding circles. Always contrast two things in a drawing, whether it's in the pattern itself or color scheme or shapes. Here I'm having long thin lines and small circles. I fooled you, right? All I just said, it's all a lie. It's something I just came up with to talk about the drawing. The truth is that I just started drawing and eventually it came together like that. I did think about having a perspective point before I started, but that's all I had. The rest, even having 2 more perspective points, just came about on the spot. And no, I did not think thoroughly on whether the lines should be of different length. It's just that, you know, when you're in a museum, you see all the plaques explaining what the artist meant by so-and-so in their painting or sculpture. As an abstract artist myself, I've always wondered what proportion of the explanation was bullshit and what was actually true. Some concepts of composition, for example. Let's talk about that. Sure, there is a golden ratio, but most of the time the golden ratio exists because it looks good like that, not because the artist planned it mathematically. Or the rule of thirds. Place a focus at a third of your picture and the composition is more compelling. Most people do it naturally when they take pictures. They don't do it consciously because they know the rule. Well, for abstract art, it's more or less the same. Sometimes you do things because they look nice, at least in your head. And you may spin any sort of story about it later, but really sometimes it's just justification found after the fact. I'm not saying that every artist out there is just trying to put nice words on their nonsense art. Of course not. But just that not everything is explainable, nor should it be. The rules of art were not devised before art was made, it's the other way around. The masters painted their masterpiece, and it's only later that people analyzed it to figure out why exactly everybody agreed it was a masterpiece. That's when you discover that a lot of pieces have triangular composition, for example. It looks better when you have 2 subjects looking at a third focal point. Or you have the light pattern orienting your gaze to a specific point of interest. Whether it's what the artist did consciously, I kinda doubt sometimes. On the other hand, you have to admit that the rules do work and they make sense. And that is why people learn art too and not just practice it. Having a knowledge of all the different empirical rules in art does help make better art. Not because it just works, but because from learning, the artist becomes able to internalize the rule and just use it naturally unconsciously. A good example is the concept of tangents. Picture a character in front of a background with a house. If the side of your character is straight in front of the edge of the house, It looks bad because the two edges touch when projected onto the flat plane that is the canvas. Instead, either you separate the two with some empty space, or you make them overlap. Well, the thing about these tangents is that if you're not aware of the concept, this part of the picture will most likely bug you, even though you don't know why. Your brain will interpret the perfectly connected shapes as there being a meaning when there isn't. If you learn about tangents, you can avoid it in the first place. Why is that important? It's because the rule of tangents doesn't really exist in real life. In real life, if you just happen to take a picture of something, you may have tangents, because real life doesn't care and doesn't follow rules. However, when you are creating something, you should know to avoid it, and it is the artist's job to do that. Let's say you are commissioned to recreate the picture from before with the bad tangent. Sure, if you separate the character from the house, it will be less faithful to the reference, but it will definitely look better. Or it just shows that you should have used another reference. I completely forgot why I got into this topic of art rules. I got sidetracked here. In any case, I think it's important for artists to study what works and what doesn't. I also think it's fine sometimes to not try to put into words why something is in art. As I said before, I did this drawing without thinking about it. In fact, even while drawing, I wasn't thinking about it. I was watching Netflix at the same time, so even my concentration was somewhere else. And sure, after drawing it, I can find ideas as to why I unconsciously did what I did, such as the placement of the perspective points. Having them in a line would look bad. Having the points form a perfect equilateral triangle would also look much more unnatural. The kind of small things that would bug you without knowing why. I can do that, find meaning when there isn't, because I have consumed a lot of art of all kinds and also looked at classes and lectures on art and internalized it to the point I do it unconsciously. So I guess my advice to you for this video would be to consume as much art as possible and learn from it. But please don't be that guy who tries to explain every step of the process. And don't try to apply all the rules to make the perfect thing. It's a lost cause. I saw a documentary recently about these musician scientist guys who conducted surveys to find out what people liked in songs. And then they crammed it all up into a record, trying to make the scientifically perfect piece. And the result is shit. For everything art related, sometimes just feeling it works much better than trying to use rules. It's the same with writing. I'm currently writing a fantasy novel and I've looked at a lot of classes and resources on how to write good scenes, good dialogue, good world building. But whenever I'm trying to apply consciously all the rules I see that should make it work, it's when the content gets dull and boring or weirdly unnatural. But that will be a topic for a future video. I really want to talk in depth about writing at some point, but I'm not far enough into it to properly recount my experience yet. Have fun when drawing and don't think about it too much, will you? The only objective you should have is to have a good time. Leave a like if you enjoyed this little art talk, or this drawing, or both. This is the sort of thing I do, so subscribe and check out my stuff through the links in the description or my social media handles on screen. I have a Ko-fi page if you want to support me more directly also. I'm Detroit and I'll see you in a week. Bye!